Welcome, boys and girls. Costin here with a discussion about special forces, or rather special operations forces, for the United States in Broken Arrow. Where they are good, where they are lacking, and where you want to use them with different kinds of specializations in the game. Let's take a look first at what special forces do have on offer. So you have some of the best infantry in the game between Delta Forces, Green Berets, Pararescue, or rather STTs, Rangers with the Mark 47, Rangers with Moz, like just really good infantry all around. You also have some really great helicopters, be it DAPs, which can either work as an attack helicopter against ground targets or can do a pretty good job against air targets. Little birds for small transport helicopters. They also have a good enough recon capability. B2 Spirits for nukes or cruise missiles. And one of the best units in the game right now, the RQ-170 Sentinel, which is probably the best recon unit in the entire game. The weakness of special forces is with regards to vehicles. So be it artillery, be it air defenses, tanks, they're not going to have those. And also their one weakness is with regards to suppression of air defense capability. Yes, you do have the F-35A and you can install anti-radiation missiles on it, but it's just not going to be enough anti-radiation missiles on an F-35A to really get the job done. And also they do tend to automatically fire these at too great of a distance, at too high of an altitude, to actually make them worth it, because you kind of want to get a bit closer to the enemy line before you fire your anti-radiation missiles, because otherwise they're going to be intercepted. In fact, they can be intercepted in a lot of different ways. So while you do technically have the capability of suppression of air defenses, it's not really the greatest capability over there. The USMC and the Stryker Cav Regiment do have much better suppression of air defense capability than what Special Forces or anyone else can provide for the United States. So it's just something worth pointing out with regards to using Special Forces in the game. Because you do have a great deal of air power, but if you're not able to suppress air defense, they're getting a lot of Patriots, or on the Russian side, they're getting S-300s, or they're getting Tors, Books, etc. Panshirs, you're going to have some problems. It can be a playstyle that can be very good and can help you win the match single-handedly, but if those enemy air defenses are not taken out one way or another or not dealt with, assuming the enemy has them, and using them properly, you're going to have some problems. So let's talk about the different specializations that you can use together with Special Forces, so all the others. So we're looking at USMC, Armor Brigades, Airborne Infantry, and the Stryker Cav Regiment. Let's start with the Armor Brigade. So what the Armor Brigade does give you is a lot of recon points, infantry points. And since a lot of your infantry is both in recon and infantry with Special Forces, you can get a ton of different things over here. The downside of the Armor Brigade is as follows. While you do have tanks, they are expensive. Yes, you can go for cheaper tanks, to be certain. You can go with like M1A2 Abrams and without maybe even Tusk upgrades and get a bunch of them. Personally, I do prefer using a bunch of these SCP V3s and V2s, just because Tusk to Armor plus Trophy is a heck of a combination if you're going to use tanks. But still, you're not necessarily going to have the most amount of tanks, especially if you combine Armor Brigade with Special Forces. So just one downside to mention on that. Also, while the Armor Brigade does have air defenses and artillery, it's not really the best air defenses. Like PAC-2 is great against planes, not so great at intercepting missiles, especially because a lot of people do tend to place them way too far back, and you do get overkill problems. Linebackers can be good in terms of dealing with enemy helicopters and planes. Sure, you do have that capability with them. They do have an active radar, so they are good, but again, just kind of a bit limited in that respect. Iron Thunder artillery and Paladins, pretty solid tube artillery in the game. In fact, Iron Thunders are probably some of the best tube artillery, at least in terms of accuracy and damage that they can do, but just like the Paladin in real life, they do have certain weaknesses, like just rate of fire, that kind of stuff, and they're also a bit more expensive than some other things, so they can be vulnerable. But the big problem with the Armor Brigade is Special Forces work very well with air power. So attack helicopters, planes. Now you can get a decent amount of attack helicopters over here, or a decent amount of helicopters anyway. So over here I have some DAPs to deal with enemy helicopters, and I also have some Guardians, but you're just not going to have the same quantity that you would with the other decks. But the real kicker over here is going to be with planes. So you're either going to lose a lot in both air-to-air or air-to-ground and the air-to-ground capability, or you're going to lose one or the other. So for instance, if you're going Armor Brigade and you want to have a bunch, let's say a B2 Spirit, you're pretty much going to have to sacrifice everything else, right? Even if you're going with some cheaper options. So you're not going to have suppression of air defense capability, you're not going to have air-to-air capability, or you can have the air-to-air capability, but you're going to be losing out in terms of air-to-ground capability, which, let me just say it, being able to call in a bunch of cruise missiles from, say, a B2 Spirit or a nuke on a concentration of forces is such a significant power benefit in a battle that shouldn't be ignored. A lot of people do ignore it, for the record. A lot of people don't use planes because, like, oh, the enemy got air defenses. Yeah, you have a lot of ways of suppressing air defenses. A lot of people do a bad job with it, to be honest. And so that's kind of my issue with Armor Brigade, really. The limitation that you do have in terms of air power. You can still have a decent level of air power, but if you're playing Special Forces, you really want the transport plane. It is a ridiculous level of capability, so that's going to be some points. And then you're going to have to decide what are you sacrificing. Like, do you sacrifice in terms of both air-to-air and air-to-ground? So, for instance, I could use an F-22 Raptor over here with some MRAMs, and I can get 2 of these F-117s. But keep in mind what I'm losing elsewhere. So, just the big limitation of the Armor Brigade. It can work, but I would dare say that the best situation you can have with Armor Brigade and Special Forces is if you know that your teammates have that air-to-air capability, and then you can focus on other things in your deck. Like if you have teammates that are bringing in that are bringing in seed capability, that are bringing in seed capability and air-to-air capability, then you can use even things like the AC-130. But outside of that, you're gonna have some problems with using the Armor Brigade on its own. Pointing out, like, it can work well, it can also cause you a lot of headaches. So I would say it's good enough if you're playing with in a coordinated team. It can be really bad if you're not, like if you're playing with randoms. Then we have Special Forces and the Stryker Brigade. So with the Stryker Brigade, still playing of recon points, infantry points, okay. You are losing out on the vehicles, but you do have the M10 Booker available, and the M10 Booker has Iron Fist active protection and the 50mm autocannon. This thing is ridiculously good in multiple ways. It's decently durable, and that autocannon will do a heck of a job. I would say, however, the main benefits that exist with a Stryker Cav regiment are with regards to their air defenses, mortars, and seaplanes. So if you want to have a deck that is providing you that kind of air defense capability, that kind of seed capability, which you do want if you're playing Special Forces, then Stryker Cav Regiment can be a good combination because you'll have a bunch of points. You will have some good vehicles with the Stryker RV, Javelin Trophy, or just the regular Stryker ICVs. Like how many you want to bring, that's up to you. I've gone heavy on STT's Green Berets over here, but you could go with less of those and just bring more vehicles. But you will have Centurion C-Rams to intercept enemy missiles or enemy cruise missiles. Stryker Shorat, pretty good vehicle. Pack-free MSCs, 2 of them with only 4 missiles. You can go with a lot more missiles, but I personally just prefer going with fewer missiles and just resupplying them. I don't have a resupply vehicle because I'm pushing things fairly hard here, though I would obviously use Ospreys for the sake of that. Never drop supplies on your air defenses. That's a great way of getting them blown up. So I'd rather just keep Patriots moving as opposed to just stacking 12 missiles on them and just getting whacked by someone who brings proper seed in a match. Just my view, or someone using artillery. So you do have those great air defenses. Then you have the Stryker mortar carrier. Stryker mortar carrier is good because you can use smoke on it. And when you're playing heavy infantry, which certainly Special Forces are, just dropping smoke on a position you're about to assault or your position you're trying to defend is fantastic. Especially, imagine you're doing a transport, an airborne drop with Special Forces. You drop smoke before they drop, they're going to take significantly less damage. So the mortar carrier is really good. The self-propelled howitzer, not so much, but I argue strongly that having some kind of level of artillery capability, even if it's not the best, can be fairly useful, especially because the Stryker SPH can be airdropped as well. So just keep that in mind with respect to that. Though it probably wouldn't work well with the MC 130. So like a Global Master would just be much better, but we don't have that available here. Helicopter power, not the greatest in the world, to be sure. You do have Guardians. I did bring Guardians, Killer Eggs, DAPs over here, and some Ospreys, mainly for supply transportation. Air power, however, is not necessarily the best, but still really, really good in some ways. So, like over here, I've got Raptors with AMRAAMs and JATMs. I don't like using F-16s for the sake of air-to-air combat. I just don't think they're good enough. Or, okay, the problem is not necessarily that they're not good enough. The problem is how many missiles can you bring on an F-16, right? And there's just going to be limitations on how many AMRAAMs they're going to have. I would rather use anything else rather than an F-16 for the sake of air-to-air combat. So, in this case, two F-22 Raptors. And then we have F-16 CJs. CJs have Sidewinders, so they can do some damage against enemy helicopters. But very importantly, they have 4 harm missiles each. So these are really good for the sake of suppression of enemy air defenses. And then you can call in a B-2 Spirit and just drop a bunch of JSSMs over here in this situation. I do have a problem a bit, though, with doing my own suppression of air defenses and then having to do either an airdrop or cruise missile drop. But the problem is you're going to spend a lot of points to do that suppression of enemy air defenses. And so getting that done, getting that suppression of air defenses done, and then having enough points to call in cruise missiles, because you kind of want to do them simultaneously. Like if you're doing a helicopter assault, it's ideal to have someone suppress air defenses before that. But this kind of gives you that flexibility of being able to do it on your own, but it's just better to have a coordination in your team, because you have really good infantry. You have really good missile capability with the B-2 Spirit. So if someone else on your team is has done a decent enough job at suppressing air defenses, and you didn't just rush in with helicopters or cruise missiles or transport planes, you can do a lot of damage to an enemy team. They might just rage quit because of that. But the Stryker Cav Regiment just gives you that personal flexibility with regards to that, and I think that's going to be really, really good. Then we have the USMC. So USMC kind of works similar with regards to Stryker Cav Regiment from that perspective, though you are lacking in terms of air defense capability and also artillery. LAVADs, not the best air defense. Like, it's worth bringing some of them. They do have a good amount of mobility, like with regards to their amphibious capability. Dragonfires can bring a lot of smoke capability in a battle, decent amount level of smoke. You do get even better infantry with the Marine CQC. So you do have some air defense. You do have M1A1 FAPs with trophy. So pretty solid tanks. Not the best tanks, but pretty solid enough. And yeah, some of the Marine options are really, really good, like Force Recon, Assaultmen with Straw, or ESMA if you want that, like just decent level of capability, Marine Raiders, etc. You're lacking in vehicle capability, but you have great air power capability. What I really like about the Marine Corps is that you look at a Viper attack helicopter. The Viper can have anti-radiation missiles in it, or it can have air-to-air missiles on it, and that great amount of anti-tank and anti-ground capability in general. So the Marine Corps gets shit done in terms of suppression of enemy air defenses. Like, just being able to suppress enemy air defenses with helicopters, pretty fantastic. Now over here I haven't gone with that. Instead I have Comanches, Vipers with air-to-air, because I just want to have that capability of dealing with enemy helicopters. And I would probably use Prowlers. Prowlers are the only dedicated electronic warfare plane that the Americans do have in the game right now. We don't have the F-18 Growlers. We should probably have the F-18 Growlers, because the Prowlers have been retired. They're slow, but they're very cheap. They have a good amount of missiles. They do have that electronic warfare capability baked in, so ECM baked in, so they're going to be able to do a good job with it. Then we have F-18C Hornets. So Hornets are pretty solid planes in their own right. Like gunslinger missiles combined with AMRAAMs. Just the combination of Sidewinders, AMRAAMs, and Gunslingers is a heck of an air-to-air capability because you have 3 different types of missiles. So an F-18C does do a great job against pretty much anything. Then an F-22, same capability. You're still lacking a really good transport plane like the MC-130H. Yeah, decent enough. Not the best transport plane, and that brings us, of course, with airborne infantry combined with special forces. This is the deck that I primarily use, though I'm doing tweaks all along this situation. So, what do we get with airborne infantry combined with special forces? Well, we get some really solid things, but we also have some inherent weaknesses over here. So, first off, the one big benefit is the M8 Thunderbolt. See, if you're playing special forces, you're not necessarily going to, and you want to have infantry, getting a bunch of tanks can be an issue. Like, what's the point in bringing tanks? Like, I guess you could just use special forces for the sake of the RQ-170. That's kind of underutilizing what the deck has on offer. That's one of my issues with Abrams, by the way, with special forces specifically. Whereas the M8 Thunderbolt is a very cheap tank and a very effective tank. I think it has the best tank gun in the entire game because it's a 120mm gun that has an incredible reload and aim time in the game. Like, I think an Armata is just as good in terms of aim time, but an Armata actually reloads slower. So in terms of both reload and aim time, it's got the best capability there. It doesn't have the best shells or the most amount of them, but given how tanks do tend to die in the game, you have active protection, you have smoke, you have airborne capabilities, you're going to drop this off a plane. In fact, I kind of wish I could bring 4 of these M8 Thunderbolts in a deck, like with Iron Fist. Like, I would give up the armor, but just give me Iron Fist APS. I don't care about a Pleek, but just give me Iron Fist APS on this thing. I would go with 4 of these. Because I could drop them from a C-17 Global Master, which is an incredibly good transport plane. Like, you can fit so much shit in this. Like, this is the high-risk, high-reward situation that we got to talk about special forces. You can dump a lot of over 1,000 points, 2,000 points of stuff on an enemy location, and they can probably wipe it out. But if enemy air defenses are not dealt with, you're going to suffer significantly. And that's the one problem with Airborne and SFO. You do have technically the capability of suppression over defenses, but again, it is that issue of like, I need a lot of points to do a helicopter assault or a cruise missile attack or an airdrop. Having to spend points on suppressing air defenses at the same time is not necessarily going to work that well, especially because suppression of air defenses is not something either special forces or airborne do especially well. Again, they have the capability, but it's not the best capability in the world. You do have the Brutus. Brutus is fantastic because you get guided rounds or smoke rounds. You just have so many options over here. I think there's a firm argument to be made that if you can't rely on your team getting smoke rounds is pretty useful. Personally, I do prefer guided rounds, but more and more, the more I play more matches, the more I'm tempted, very firmly tempted to go with smoke rounds because it's great capability. I mean, it would be freaking fantastic to have team members that can give you smoke, because that's one of the problems you do have over here. You don't have smoke capability, unfortunately. Like, you do have the Hawkeye. It doesn't have smoke capability, so you can only use the Brutus for that, and it just feels like such a waste of the Brutus, because like guided rounds on the Brutus with the many options of guiding things. So you got like the SCT that you can use to guide. You've got Ranger snipers. You got drones that can do laser designation. Actually, you can get more stuff in terms of laser designation if you really want to, like airborne snipers, that kind of stuff. So you do have the capability as a laser designation. Guide rounds can be great. Would wish someone would provide smoke because it would really help my life out. And that's kind of the problem with airborne and SFO, special forces. You are kind of reliant on your team to make up for some of the gaps. It's not, by the way, a ridiculous ask to have team members just drop smoke. And if they do have that capability. Well, a lot of people don't do it. Coordination is bad. You do lack in air defenses. And while Free Brutus, pretty solid artillery options, just not necessarily the best in the world. Helicopter power, though, and air power is where you went out. Like, and just, can you trust your team to help you out, or are you just playing on your own? Because that does, because you can achieve so much more if your team members were just sitting on their ass the entire match. Like, I'll give you an idea. Imagine you have someone that's just got Stryker and USMC, and he's got so many freaking seaplanes, and he just uses them constantly. Like, quite seriously, you just have a guy. Like, you want to talk about proper support gameplay in the game? Let's talk about proper support to help someone doing air power, right? You would need the coordination, but imagine having someone with Stryker and USMC, and they just have both F-16s and Prowlers. The amount of damage that that guy can do against an enemy team, especially if you have someone that's doing air power, is very significant. Whereas if you force someone who's doing it, who's trying to do cruise missiles, helicopters, infantry, probably all at once, to also do seed, that is a painful fucking situation, I'm not gonna lie. So you do have that dilemma as special forces with Airborne. Do you ignore seed capability, hoping that your team members are gonna wake up, or do you get it yourself? I've learned on my own skin that hoping people will do their job, that will do something, like, this is the kind of deck, like, with regards to any deck, you kind of want to pay attention, okay, what are people picking, right? Like, is someone going SMC, is someone going Stryker Cav, all that. You can say, oh, well, Airborne has the F-15EX Strike Eagle with harm missiles. That is such a gigantic waste of fucking points on harm missiles. And also, even, let's consider the F-15EX Eagle, right? Even if you go with the cheapest possible options, cheapest possible choices over here, in terms of suppression of air defense, it's still a 390-point plane. Ignoring everything else about the EX Eagle 2, that is a very questionable move. And it's kind of worth pointing out, you're going to lose out a lot of different things by doing it. Beyond the fact that you're using a plane that's not meant for that, you're also losing on the following things. You're losing, even if you do decide to just get a bunch of Sidewinders or get a bunch of, different missiles on it, even if you do that, you're missing out on the fuel tank. Some will argue, well, you can't realistically spend that many missiles. But it's not just about spending all those missiles. It's having loiter time. Even if you don't have the most amount of missiles. People are right when they say you're not going to spend so many missiles, right? Except at the beginning of a match. This is why the EX Eagle is so freaking great. You throw this in the beginning of the match, you probably can spend that many missiles. Like 12 missiles, certainly. I've done so multiple occasions. Might need to micro it. So the EX Eagle 2 from Airborne is a waste of fucking resource, of an enormously powerful resource for a role it's not great for. And then you're also going to, so if you go air suppression or air defense, you're going to lose out in some other things. I would firmly recommend if you want that, and you may want it, get the F-35A. Get free of them. I've chosen to remove the F-22 over here, go with free F-35As. It's not a great dynamic, but if I can suppress air defenses, I even got rid of the nuke. Ideally, however, here's how it would look. You'd get the nuke, right? You get the B-1B, maybe with 24 missiles, right? On that. And you would also get maybe AC-130s as well, or an F-22 Raptor. If you had teammates that could do that suppression of air defenses well enough. As you might imagine, that is a very damn questionable situation in the best case scenario. So, let me say it like this. If you can bring two AC-130s in a match and they're not instantly shot down, the amount of damage that these things can do is ridiculously good. But you need someone to give you that suppression of air defenses, otherwise you're kind of screwed. So it's up to you how you want to play that. Not the best situation to find yourself in, but that's one of the reasons pre-mades, I imagine, are so popular with so many people, because you can rely on other people to help you out in that respect. Again, not great, not the best situation to be dealing with, but it does work. Costin signing out. Stay tuned.